to all our learners, welcome to the lecture on United Nations. I am Dr. Amna. I teach political science at Shyama Prasad Mukherjee College for Women, University of Delhi. Now, in this lecture, we'll be trying to cover a vast trajectory. The lecture will present insights into the historical evolution, structures, functions of United Nations. The lecture will also describe the working of specialized agencies within the UN family and discuss issues of reforms looking at contemporary global scenario. The name United Nations was coined by United States President Franklin D. Roosevelt, and it was used in the declaration by the United Nations of 1st January 1942. This was during the Second World War, when representatives of 26 nations pledged their governments to continue fighting together against the Axis powers. Now, when we try to understand United Nations, one has to give insights and take into account the historical evolution. On 12 June 1941, there was Inter-Allied Declaration, that is, the great powers got together and there was an attempt to work together for peace, and thereby the declaration was signed. On 1943, at Moscow, the United States Secretary of State, Hull, made the first flight of his life to journey to Moscow for the conference. The Moscow Declaration was later signed, and this also showed that how various powers were getting together in order to put the world towards the trajectory of peace. In Tehran, in the year 1943, in December, 2 months after the Four-Power Declaration, Roosevelt, leaders like Stalin and Churchill met for the first time at Tehran, the capital of Iran, and they declared that they had worked out concerted plans for the final victory. Then there was the Yalta Conference, which was also known as the Crimea Conference, held in 1945. Now, this was during, when the Second World War was coming to the conclusion, meeting of heads of states of United States, the United Kingdom, the Soviet Union to discuss post-war reorganization of Germany and also Europe, which had huge implications for world peace. The Tehran Conference was a meeting between the US President Franklin Roosevelt, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, and Soviet Premier Joseph Stalin in Tehran between November 28 and December 1, 1943. It discussed important issues concerning the fate of Europe and Germany in the post-war period. There was an agreement, a consensus to work towards broader international cooperation, and this also became one of the central theme of negotiation at Tehran. One must also read more about the Tehran Declaration from various historical archives, and one of that is history.state.gov. Then when we are trying to understand United Nations and its contemporary form, the historical evolution, as we understand and discuss the Dumbarton Oaks Conference, which constituted the first step taken to carry out Moscow Declaration of 1943, which recognized the need for a post-war international organization to succeed League of Nations. An insight into League of Nations. League of Nations was the organization for international cooperation established in 1920 at the initiative of victorious Allied powers or at the end of the First World War. It was headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland, created after the First World War to provide a forum for resolving international disputes. Though first proposed by President Woodrow Wilson as a part of the 14th points plan, but once when we try to analyze the working of League of Nations and also look into causes for its probable failure, we see that the founding ideas were given by United States President, but however United States never became a member. Then when we try to look into the immediate events that were important for understanding formation of United Nations, the United Nations Conference on International Organization, this is commonly known as the San Francisco Conference. It took place from 25th April 1945 to 26 June 1945 in San Francisco, California, United States of America. The convention resulted in creation of United Nations Charter, which was later opened for signature. Now let's understand the United Nations Charter, and for this we read out from the original UN Charter that we have accessed from un.org. Now this charter is very important to give us insights as to what are the main aims, objectives that United Nations stands for. The United Nations Charter says, and we read out, "We, the peoples of the United Nations, determine to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, which twice in our lifetime has brought untold sorrow to the mankind, to reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of human person, in equal rights of men and women, and of nations large and small, to establish conditions under which justice and respect for the obligations arising from treaties and other sources of international law can be maintained, and to promote social progress and better standards of life in larger freedom." And for these ends, again reading out from authentic UN's document sources, un.org, the ends primarily to practice tolerance and live together in peace with one another as good neighbors, to unite our strength to maintain international peace and security, to ensure by the acceptance of the principles and institutions of methods that armed force shall not be used save in the common interest, to employ international machinery for promotion of the economic and social advancements of all peoples. Dear learners, you must access un.org for a detailed insight into the United Nations Charter, the aims and objectives. We now read out the prominent articles one by one. The Article 1 states that the purposes of United Nations are to maintain peace and security, to develop friendly relations amongst nations based on respect for the principle of equal rights and self-determination of peoples, to achieve international cooperation in solving international problems of an economic, social, cultural or humanitarian character, and in promoting and encouraging respect for human rights, to be a center for harmonizing the actions of nations in the attainment of these common ends. The Article 2 gives insights into the structure and organization of the United Nations. It says, and we read Article 2, "The organization and its members, in pursuit of the purposes stated in Article 1, shall act in accordance with the following principles. The organization is based on the principle of sovereign equality of all its members. All members, in order to ensure to all of them the rights and benefits resulting from membership, shall fulfill in good faith the obligations assumed by them in accordance with the present charter. All members shall settle their international disputes by peaceful means in such a manner that international peace and security and justice are not endangered. All members shall refrain in their international relations from the threat or use of force against the international integrity or political independence of any state, or in any other manner inconsistent with the purposes of United Nations. Once again, this is from un.org. The Article 7 gives us insight into the major organs of United Nations. They are established as principal organs of United Nations, as Article 7 says, and we read: a General Assembly, a Security Council, an Economic and Social Council, a Trusteeship Council, International Court of Justice, Secretariat. Each subsidiary organs, such subsidiary organs as may be found necessary, may be established in accordance with the present charter. And once again, this is from un.org. Now we have a look at the functioning of the main organs of United Nations. The United Nations General Assembly is one of the 6 principal organs of United Nations, the only one in which all member nations have equal representation and main deliberative, policy making and representative organ of the UN. It is chief deliberative, policy making, representative organ of United Nations. The UNGA plays a significant role in the process of standard setting and codification of international law. The Assembly meets from September to December each year, and thereafter from January to September as required, including to take up outstanding reports from 4th and 5th committees. Article 24(1) talks about the Security Council and explains the mandate of the Security Council. Article 24(1) of the UN Charter gives the Security Council the primary responsibility for maintenance of international peace and security. Under Article 25, member states agree to accept and carry out decisions of the Security Council. Powers include the establishment of peacekeeping operations, international sanctions. It is the only body, when we talk about the Security Council, only body of the United Nations with the authority to issue binding resolutions to member states. The Security Council consists of 15 members, the great powers that were there victorious at the end of the Second World War, and it also looks at that today the composition of Security Council with respect to the permanent members and the 10 non-permanent members which are elected on a regional basis to serve a term of 2 years, all of it is under debate, looking at the need for reform of UN Security Council owing to changes in global context. The United Nations Security Council's veto power refers to the power of the 5 permanent members of United Nations Security Council to veto any substantive resolution. However, a caution here, a permanent member's abstention or absence does not prevent a draft resolution from being adopted. The next organ of United Nations, the Economic and Social Council, which is a principal body for coordination, policy review, policy dialogue, recommendations on economic, social and environmental issues, as well as implementation of internationally agreed development goals. The ECOSOC serves as the central mechanism for the activities of the UN system and its specialized agencies, which we shall see in the later part of the lecture, in the economic, social, environmental fields, supervising subsidiary and expert bodies. ECOSOC has 54 members elected by General Assembly for overlapping 3 years term. It is United Nations central platform for reflection, for debate, for innovative thinking on several issues like sustainable development. The International Court of Justice is the principal judicial organ of United Nations. Its seat is at the Peace Palace in The Hague, the Netherlands. It is the only of the 6 principal organs of the United Nations which is not located in New York. This is for explaining further facts. The court's role is to settle, in accordance with international law, legal disputes submitted to it by states and to give advisory opinions on legal questions referred to it by authorized United Nations organs and specialized agencies. The Secretariat comprises the Secretary General and tens and thousands of international UN staff members who carry out day-to-day work of UN as mandated by the General Assembly and the organization's other principal organs. The Secretary General is the chief administrative officer of the organization, appointed by the General Assembly on the recommendation of the Security Council for 5 years, renewable term. The UN staff members, so what we see, are recruited internationally and locally, and they work in duty stations and on peacekeeping missions all around the world wherever the General Assembly or the Security Council mandates them. The United Nations Trusteeship Council is very important to understand as one of the principal organs of United Nations. It was established to help ensure that trust territories were administered in the best interest of the inhabitants and of peace and security. However, its operations suspended from 1st November 1994. The UN system, the larger word, that is the unofficial UN family. It is made up of UN itself and many programs, funds, specialized agencies, all with their own leadership and budget. We now have a look at some of them. The programs and funds are financed through voluntary rather than accessed contributions. The specialized agencies are independent international organizations funded by both voluntary as well as access contributions. This piece of information we accessed from UN.org. Some of the specialized agencies which existed before the First World War, some were associated with League of Nations, others were created almost simultaneously with the United Nations, and some others were created by the United Nations itself to meet the emerging needs. So this gives you an idea about the diverse and broad framework of UN family. Let's understand some of them. The International Labour Organization was founded in 1919. The Constitution, forming part of the Treaty of Versailles. The ILO became the first specialized agency of UN in 1946, and it is the only tripartite UN agency. It brings together representatives of governments, employers, workers to jointly shape policies. ILO is devoted to advancing opportunities for women and men to obtain decent and productive work in conditions of freedom, equity, security, dignity, promote rights of work, encourage decent employment opportunities, enhance social protection are some of the important works done by ILO. One may read more about it at ilo.org. The United Nations Education, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, was established in 1945 to contribute to peace and security by promoting collaboration amongst nations through education, through science, through culture. The General Conference is UNESCO's supreme body and meets every 2 years on the proposal of the Executive Board. The General Conference during its ordinary session sets the next session's venue, and the UNESCO's Executive Board is elected by the General Conference for a 4-year term and consists of 58 member states. Each member state appoints representatives with competence in fields related to UNESCO and qualified to fulfill the administrative and executive duties of the boards. And UNESCO's mission, once again reading out from unesco.org, is to contribute to building the culture of a peace, eradication of poverty, sustainable development, intercultural dialogue through education, sciences, culture, communication, information. It wants to create conditions of dialogue amongst civilization, cultures and people. The World Health Organization is the body of United Nations responsible for directing and coordinating health. When we look at the functions of WHO, we read out from who.org. It provides leadership on matters critical to health, engaging in partnerships, shaping research agenda, stimulating generations, translation and dissemination of valuable information, setting the norms, standards, articulating ethical and evidence-based policy options, providing technical support, catalyzing change, building sustainable institutional capacity, amongst others. Another aspect, that is the United Nations Development Program. It is United Nations Global Development Network which advocates for change, connects countries to knowledge, experience and resources, provides experts advice, provides technical and investment cooperation amongst nations. Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, it represents the world's commitment to universal human rights and to the principal UN office mandated to promote and to protect the human rights of all people. The Office of United Nations Human High Commissioner for Refugees. Now, this is a humanitarian and a non-political aspect and it's the main functions of UNHCR is to provide international protection to refugees and other persons of concerns, including stateless people, and to seek durable solutions for them. The UNEP, United Nations Environmental Program, is leading environmental authority in the United Nations system. It uses its expertise to strengthen environmental standards, practices while helping implement environmental obligations to the country's regional and global level. UNEP's mission is to provide leadership, encourage partnership in caring for the environment by inspiring, informing and enabling nations and people to improve their quality of life without compromising that of future generations. The UNICEF, United Nations International Children Emergency Fund, was created by UN General Assembly during its first session in 1946 to help emergency needs of children in post-war Europe. Today, when we look at later, the program has extended benefits to long-range benefits also, and today is often called as United Nations Children's Fund. And UNICEF works for the protection of children with respect to survival, health, well-being, providing funds for training the personnel, amongst others. So, when we look at how various agencies, programs of United Nations are working in diversified agenda and areas, then the last aspect of our lecture today, of our learning today, would be on focusing on reform of UN. Why is it necessary to reform UN? First, it is to remain relevant with respect to changes in the context of global politics. It is essential to incorporate change in tune with the changing environment. And as is said, that regular reform, continuous innovation, improvements are hallmarks essential if the organization wishes to make an impact on the environment. Some of the suggestions for reform of United Nations: better coordination and management of various programs, funds within the UN system, stronger human rights promotion and looking into multidimensionality of peacekeeping missions, need to expand the membership to emerging powers. Look at how the idea of security from military has been changed to new security, where human security, pollution, food, poverty, global warming, climate change, livelihoods, all are very essential, not only for the well-being of the individual, but for the welfare and development of the state, and this has huge stakes for development and welfare for global politics also. So, dear learners, this was the lecture on United Nations. We hope you all gained significant learning insights in the lecture. Thank you.